So here we are, week 2 of our AEC roundup of all things education. I think we have landed on the absolutely fabulous title of School Briefs. Our weekly update, just a little bite size of the week that was in education. So a big week this week. I know we've got lots that have been happening with the negotiations, ERO reports. I know we want to talk about voting. And I know there's those comments that David Seymour just made recently that we'd like to touch on as well. But first up, tell us what's happening. I'm obviously in the secondary space, so I'm in a different space than you, Liam. What's happening on the pay negotiation front? We do know it's stalled, and it does feel like it's had a bit of a stalemate.
Yeah, kia ora, Claire. I'll jump into that, but my preference was that you should have read out your table of contents for this as you did offline, because I preferred just the
Okay.
shoplifting.
Okay, the shoplifting. Okay, so do you want me to do that again?
No, you're right. Pay negotiations has kind of shot to the kind of forefront of a lot of people's minds. I mean, primary teachers have been negotiating since June last year.
Yeah.
But 10 days ago, we saw an absolute break from tradition to the point where I can't find anybody who has recalled the government doing this type of move where they've gone and offered individual collective agreements to non-union members halfway through negotiations.
How does that fit in with the whole good faith promise? I mean, it just doesn't seem to fit in with that at all.
Yeah, that's right. We see it as a clear breach and really disappointing given negotiations are at a pretty delicate time right now.
Yeah.
And I think what they're trying to do is to put pressure on union members to take the offer that they've already rejected back in December. I think that the government assumed that when secondary school teachers voted in favour that primary teachers would just kind of fold.
All in line, yeah.
But I think what we're consistently hearing is that in this particular round, primary teachers believe that they have a discrete set of issues that they're definitely keen to get resolved. But we are heading into facilitation this week, and so hopefully there'll be a little bit of movement there.
Is it just me, or has the role of the Public Service Commissioner seems to have shifted recently? Like I sort of always thought that role that Brian Roche had was in service to the public service, and it feels like it's flipped. Is it just me, or has that always been the case?
I think that's kind of a larger debate around the role of the public sector more broadly. But yeah, I mean, the Public Service Commissioner has been given a role that we haven't seen in place, certainly in my time negotiating agreements, where they're kind of putting him out as the kind of public front person.
Yeah.
Normally they work in the background and they're the kind of conduit to having collective agreement packages go through to cabinet, and it's always been a very kind of behind the scenes role. But this time round, you'll note that he's doing a fair amount of media,
a lot of frontline commentary and comment.
Yeah, and normally you would see that being done by the Minister of Education, and it's just not the case.
I keep thinking of him as the Public Service Decommissioner in my mind. Just feels a bit that way at the moment. But yeah, frustrating. But I mean, I hope it goes really well this week. I know at the end of the day, the teachers, you all want to, this to be resolved. No one is doing this just to be a pain in the ass. This is about ensuring we actually get, the conditions that actually our teachers deserve. And at a time when we're just being asked more and more and more, which brings me to the next thing that I know we want to discuss this morning, which is that bloody announcement around the ERO reports. It feels like another week, another reform that no one really asked for. And those who are in school will know that ERO reports has been going through a swing back and forth for a number of years now in terms of, having one way of doing ERO reports. Then that got thrown out and we were going to have a completely different way of doing ERO reports. And then we've swung back. And now it feels like we've swung back so far we landed somewhere in the UK.
Yeah.
And here we are with something that looks a little bit like an Ofsted report landing in our inbox.
It's a real concern how much copying and pasting the policy teams are doing straight out of the UK.
Yeah.
Because, the reports that we've been shared this week look to be kind of carbon copies of what we're getting out of the UK. And there's a couple of comments I want to share about them shortly. But I'm always really interested that the Minister is so keen to paint all of these changes as this is what parents have been asking for.
Oh,
This is going to give parents the information that they need to be able to work out what schools to send. And that just fails for a couple of reasons. One is that
so many
um,
reasons.
the overwhelming majority of our schools are zoned, and so parents actually don't have the choice around
Yeah.
what school they're going. That's certainly the case for my kids.
Unless, of course, they go private or charter school, Liam.
That's right. That's right. But the other one is that parents don't sit down at their dining room table with kind of 10 different ERO reports printed out and weighing up pros and cons. They go and have a tour of the school. They talk to
Yeah.
teachers. They talk to other
Well,
parents,
you hope they do.
to the
Yeah.
principal, and that's the type of decision making that they use. And so I think that there's some huge questions that need to be asked around the actual purpose for this reform, because the idea that it's for parents, I think, falls short.
Oh, and that also doesn't make sense. I did a bit of a breakdown on my Substack earlier in the week where I just doing a bit of a deep dive, looking at a couple of the examples that they put up, the primary example and the secondary example. And, one of them was 12 pages long. And then I posted out our last formal ERO report at Albany Senior High School. It would have, printed out, it would have been 2-3 pages max. It gave you a background of our school, what our strengths were, and what we were working on. Really lovely. Gave you the context, talked about our areas of success, talked about areas that we were working on. That to me was actually a far more useful ERO report for parents, because a 12-page report, we absolutely know they will default to using those blooming color-coded charts. And don't get me started on the two different examples that they chose to use. The example we had from the primary school, high equity index, i.e., formerly low decile. The fact that they identified the principal by name and how long they've been there, and in some cases, just how experienced they are or not. So in this case, it was a female principal that had only been there 3 years. And then this was one where they was of concern. So this was a primary school of concern. Lots of those sort of orangey and red boxes ticked. Absolutely damaging report, because what you're going to look at, the bolded of concern, you're going to see the color coded, lots of oranges and red. Then you look at the secondary school. It was a predominantly Pākehā school, experienced male principal. They made sure that they said he was experienced as well as being there for a long time. That one was low equity index, so the equivalent of an old high decile school, and an absolute sea of, blue and teal boxes were ticked. And we can see absolutely the damage this is going to do. And, there was some great commentary around this week. We had B. Thomas's post that she did. We also had Linda, one of our AEC, and Sarah, another person from AEC, that did commentary around this. And all of it kept coming back to the damage that these are going to do, because the way that they just colour a school, that stuff does not need to be outward facing. This nonsense that this is a mechanism and it's something that they need in order to resource schools appropriately and give them the supports. What an absolute load of, absolute crock. As a school leader, we know that you never, ever, you don't publicise your kids' results as a means of giving them the support they need, and the same goes for schools. That information absolutely should be gathered, but it needs to be shared back with the Ministry of Education and making sure those schools get interventions and support. It does not need to be a quick colour block. And that thing sits there then for how long? You're sitting with that report over your head whilst you're going through the process of trying to build up, who knows what journey that school has been on. They may have been on a slow journey to improvement and recovery, and they're still going to be ending up with a whole lot of oranges and reds and potentially an of concern sort of criteria. I don't know. It really upset me. It upset me as a principal that we're potentially, we're going to have these ERO reports that are going to name the principal. They're going to outline their level of experience, that are going to be color coded, and, basically all your laundry is going to be out there for everyone to look at, rather than focusing on what matters. And I also think about the cost of all of this. time and time again, I look at these reforms and I say, where could this money be being spent? We're talking about replacing our curriculum ad nauseum. We're talking about replacing how we do our ERO reports. We know we're going to have a whole qualification system that's going to be changed, that's going to be a whole waste, And talking about waste, what about that comment from David Seymour this week?
Oh, just one more thing on the
Oh,
ERO.
yes.
It's yet another example of why in the international community our country's seen as a kind of
Yeah.
pendulum country in terms of education policy, because this whole punitive approach was fully exhausted under the last Key government,
Yeah.
and we actually learn a lot around how you have to get alongside schools that are struggling, and I think we're really starting to see those dots being connected around David Seymour's failed charter schools policy. And so they're looking for mechanisms around how do you kind of turn public schools into charter schools.
Absolutely.
And if you get too many of those red marks next to your name, then
Yeah.
one of the kind of interventions that they're going to do is to turn you into a charter school. And I think is a kind of shocking reminder around what a kind of second term national act government are going to look
Could
like.
achieve.
Going to be
Yeah,
very
and I mean, it didn't take much for people to join the dots with that system reform bill, and not only the charter schools, but we know that they're going to be able to have whole collections and community of charter schools. So, that's got the risk to do so much damage, and I don't know. I just think it's unnecessary. It's a waste of money. It's going to be hugely damaging to our well-being of our school leaders and our school communities. And, at best, it's going to be enabling parents to engage in school choice conversations, which, as we know, shouldn't be the conversations they're needing to have, because every school should be the school that you want to attend. The school in your community should be your school of choice. It's really disheartening, and it's disheartening because it's just one of so many things that are going. It feels like completely in the wrong direction at pace.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But you were going to take us on to lunch in schools announcement.
My goodness. I don't know if anyone saw the news clip the other night where David Seymour likened people taking home leftover lunches to shoplifting, I think his analogy was. So this absolute bonkers email that's gone out to schools saying that they are not allowed to take school lunches, leftover school lunches home, that they have to go into the waste.
Yeah, look, I think it's David Seymour misunderstanding what causes those surplus lunches in schools, because largely it isn't around attendance that
No.
that we are already tracking based on attendance. Typically, it comes from if you've got lunches that aren't the favourites for kids.
Yeah.
And so I know in schools where I'm from, often you end up with one or two going back. And so schools are in that kind of natural position
Yeah.
around, well, we're not just going to chuck these out. We know that we've got need within our communities.
Yeah.
Our school takes ours to Just Zilch, which is one of those free shops.
Yeah.
And that's been a system that's been working really well. And the school feels good about it, because it means when we aren't chucking them in the bin. But the bit that surprised me about this was the particular attack line David Seymour used. This idea of school principals shoplifting from the government.
Oh, robbing.
I mean, what an absolute nonsense. I mean, I think that there is a real credible argument around how we ensure that food that's passed on is kind of meets a kind of food safety standard, because they could have been sitting off to the side for X number of hours.
Yeah.
But I think that is something that we just have to work out how to overcome.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we heard from Linda Knight the other day, was that principals in her community were keen to kind of problem solve around how we do it.
Yeah.
But it just fails the common sense test just to kind of chuck these.
And no one wants excess lunches. It's not like anyone's actually asking for them to supply excess lunches so they can hand them out to the community. This isn't about sort of wanting to waste. And quite frankly, it still comes back to the fact that the model is the wrong model. Yeah. I mean, I look back on the model that was the Healthy Lunches program, and that sort of ecosystem that existed within every community was just so much better and so much efficient. The idea that your local provider could become your school lunch provider, and that sort of circle and cycle of food and waste would have been ironed out organically within your community as well. because you're working literally with the people down the road that are supplying lunches. So actually,
Yep.
we wouldn't have this problem in the first place had we had the original locally provided lunch program anyway.
And I saw Ginny Anderson make a really good point at the end of that news article around how stupid the timing of David's comments are, given that we are in a cost of living crisis, which is only compounding with the fuel issues that we've got going on right now.
Oh, absolutely. And, here we are. Schools are absolutely the hubs of their community. And to think that we should be anything other is just a reflection on him not understanding the place of schools and community. And then the other thing we were going to mention about, there's been a bit of a push from the Electoral Commission. There is now an initiative where all students can be enrolled in voting through the Electoral Commission, so that you're not signing up to any random website. This is a really awesome initiative that happens every 3 years in line with the election. You can sign up your students. There are resources available on the website that enables young people to learn about the electoral system and participate in the national voting. So that's awesome for all students. That's open from year 1 right through to year 13. But we were talking offline before about actually now is the time to start really ensuring that our 18-year-olds in the system, or those that are going to be 18 by the time elections roll around in November. One good thing about pushing it out to November, there's that many more young people that will be ready to go to participate in the voting. So I guess now is a really good time to do that sign up through the Electoral Commission, but also use that maybe as a bit of a lever to ensure that if you are in a secondary school and you have got 17, 18-year-olds, that you are starting to have those conversations to make sure that they are making really informed decisions when it comes to our elections in November, particularly as they'll be off out of school on study leave at that time as well.
What do secondary schools traditionally do, and is what the Electoral Commission doing now new?
I think that the one that's happening now, I know has happened at least for the last couple of elections, because I know we've participated in it as long as I've been at Albany Senior High School. And I think it's very much a school-by-school basis. Like, we have a politics committee at Albany Senior High School, and so when it's come around to election year, we always invite in the local MPs and we encourage them to come and have inter-party debates or come and have sessions. So we make sure absolutely every political party is invited in. We do lunchtime sessions with them. And the great thing about election year is they're all available. They're falling over themselves to get in front of audiences. So I don't think it's necessarily standard for all schools to do that, but I do think there's a real opportunity that we've got in these coming months to invite those politicians in and ensure our young people are really aware about what the election process entails, and particularly now because they can't enrol at the time of election. Remember, this election is the first year, the first time where they can't actually enrol on the day. So we do have a greater responsibility, I think, in our secondary schools to ensure that they know what it involves to become enrolled to vote, and ensure that they have some sort of information. There's some great platforms out there that allow them to engage with all the different parties, and so they can make really informed decisions when it comes to election time in November.
I'm always sensitive around ideas that put more work onto schools, but given that we have had that law change, do you think that there is need for schools to be stepping into the space?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the initiative that they've got with kids voting is a great avenue in. And the nice thing is it's fully resourced. So there are already different resources for helping out schools to do it. So, fantastic opportunity to teach some civics. But also I just think we've got to make sure our young people are ready to go into the world knowing how this system works and knowing that they know how to make informed choices,
Yeah. I guess I'm not always keen on making comparisons to what's going on in the US, but I think one of the takeaways there is that democracy is not something free that we just get by right. It's something that we have to continue to work to reinforce. And we know that if you can get a young voter voting early, then they'll continue that practice.
Yeah. And actually, that reminds me of something else that I know we were going to chat about. Rose Hipkins has a new book out. I've just ordered my copy. I've got my copy sitting next to my Betty Buys, Lifelong Learning in a Post-Truth World, which actually relates to the exact stuff we're talking about. I think the whole democracy discussion and the whole post-truth sort of idea is something we need to be teaching our young people. I know we're doing more work in that space at our school, particularly in the time of AI and upskilling our young people to use AI effectively. But a big shout out to Rose Hipkins for publishing yet another fantastic book, which I'm really looking forward to diving into in the coming weeks. Really important topic. I actually passed it on to my daughter who's at university, and she's doing public relations and politics. And she was going, oh my God, this is exactly the stuff that we need to be learning about and talking about. So awesome to have that fantastic book. But that brings us to a really exciting announcement. What is going to be getting launched this week, Liam?
You're going to have to remind me.
I think it's might be our conference.
Oh, yeah.
And that was my really smooth transition, since we
No,
know Rose is going to be a key part of that fantastic event.
what I was going to say is that we're actually in really intense negotiations with Rose around doing a Substack Live about her book.
Excellent.
So yeah, that'll be something to look forward to. But I'm thinking that's definitely not happening this week.
No,
Um,
that's it.
But yeah, this week we are going to be launching all of the details about the upcoming conference. Really pleased to be able to confirm some of our international guests that we have got coming. Like last year, there's going to be early bird specials, and we're going to be able to talk a little bit more about the kind of direction of conference, because one thing we're really wanting to pick up on is this idea of how do you build a kind of long-term bipartisan approach to education. And that's definitely going to be the thrust of what we want to talk about, particularly because we are heading into an election year.
Yeah. And governments come and governments go. And, you know, these reforms to a degree, they also come and go. But at the end of the day, there's some really important things that we all know is incredibly important and then we hold on to. So exciting announcements are on the way. So, you know, there's a lot we could be getting upset about in terms of the reforms and all the rest of it, but there's a lot for us to look forward to as well. And particularly when we know there are opportunities to come together and to feel really supported in each other's company to do the right thing by our young people, regardless of what's happening at a national and an international level. So exciting times ahead. A reminder again that we've got Claire Coleman's sessions that keep cycling through at the moment. If you're interested in getting yourselves prepared for responding to the year 1 to 10 curriculum, now's the time to do it, because that time is going to be running out just on the other side of the school holidays. But awesome. Busy time, busy week, big issues, but lots to look forward to on the horizon.
Awesome. Oh, nice talking to you, Claire.
Thanks, Liam. It's another school briefs. Does that title work? I'm not sure.